Welcome to Tactical Reviews for a detailed look at the entire Jungle King series from Aitor, the Jungle King 1, 2 and 3. Before we dive into the details of each of these models and how they are both similar and differ, we'll just, while we've got them all side by side, just do a bit of a comparison in size from the original Jungle King, which is the largest, to one of the most, I would say probably most copied knives, the Jungle King 2, which is the size down, and the most recent edition, which is the Jungle King 3. And as you can see here, quite substantial difference. The Jungle King 3 only as long as the sheath of the Jungle King 1. So what we're going to do now, there's so many features in these, we'll pick one of them, work through all those details and really get to know what these are like. So starting with the Jungle King 1, the original and largest of these hollow handle survival knives from Aitor, and you can see here, just in comparison to my hand, this is a substantial package altogether, and a big knife. So we're going to go in really close, but just while we're on this overall view, take a look at the size of this Jungle King 1. So we'll come back to the knife, but we're going to go right in on the sheath. So I'm going to come in, you've got the overall view here, but to get the details, I'm just going to zoom in. So here we are with a little leg tie clip. So it's a small plastic clip together, quite neat in the fact that in order to unclip you have to come in this direction and the cords are on that side. So this is your going onto your leg, you pull the cords to tighten it onto your leg, and at that point for it to release it has to come into your leg to actually release. So simple but effective. There is no elastication on this, so you know, be careful not to put it too tight, but on such a big knife you probably do want to stop it flapping about. Next up, and this is one of the, I hate to use the word, but iconic features that this type of knife that Aitor have inspired so many copies of, is the inclusion of a slingshot into the base of the sheath. So we have these little arms that fold out. Onto that you would fit, which we'll see later, the actual slingshot rubbers, and that gives you something else to try and use to get some food in the wild, depending on how good you are with a slingshot. I'm not that good. So we fold those slingshot arms back, moving up onto the main body of the sheath, and we've got a large section of cord wrap. So this cord will be very useful in a survival situation, and what it's doing is also covering on the back. There is a sharpening stone under the cord wrap, and once you've removed the cord wrap you have got a stone, an abrasive stone, rubbing against your clothing. I would consider the stone on the back of a sheath like this to be a sort of a last ditch thing. You can just about use them to keep a knife maintained in the absence of anything better. And so we've got that under there with that cord tied off here. Then we get on to the retention systems. So used a toggle release system, very often used on military pouches. So you have this toggle, once that comes out it's a quick release open. So pretty secure in place. It's not going to loosen like a press stud would. It is a little bit fiddlier to put together than a press stud, so it is what it is. Then we have on the belt loop, we have the same system, so preventing you from having to take your belt off to fit this. Again, we've got a quick release tab, and that opens up. Pop that on your belt, put it back together, and then also what's quite nice here is that when the knife is in place, it sits against this, and there's no way that that tab can come loose while the knife is in the sheath. So now we have to have a look at what's inside. So what Aitor do with the Jungle King knives is you actually have so much packed in. It's really like you know, the multi-tool version of a survival knife. And what we have inside the sheath here, in fact I just have to take this little cord off the retention strap, which I'll pop there. There's something to keep it in place. You'll see in a moment why I did that. So inside the sheath we have a little slide out tray. Say little, there we go. Yeah, it's the full length of the sheath. And on the back there we have another knife. So let's come in a bit closer on what we've got inside the sheath. Okay, so another tool inside the sheath, listed as the Aitor Skinner JKI or 1, and so we've got a little skinning hook, small secondary knife, and so it's completely slim profile with finger grips and plenty of jimping here. So here we have an extra secondary knife with various, you know, a little spanner, emergency only really, it would really bite into the nuts and damage them, but anyway, and then a bottle opener, can opener, tool, pry, screwdriver, and so something which perhaps you might actually bind to a stick and use as a spear rather than the primary knife. Anyway, altogether very useful to have an extra blade held within the sheath. And then we have the tray holding a few extra key components. So on this side is actually kind of like a half sheath, so that extra blade sits there. Signalling mirror, there is some sort of information printed into the back here, might be useful, might not. And then within the tray we have a magnesium fire lighter, there's a little glass vial. Now in all the examples I've seen this is empty. Kind of looks like those free perfume samples, and it has a sort of a dip wand, again more I would think in keeping with perfume, but perhaps in here you would put some oil or something, some other fluid you want. I wouldn't put a flammable one in there, but let's say oil of some sort might be useful to have, and you can choose what to put. They haven't put anything in there. And then going with that iconic slingshot, the arms on the sheath, we have the slingshot rubber. As is the case always with these things, they're never going to be that easy to put back once you go for it. In fact, just looking in here, this actually needs to come out of the front. So there we go, slingshot rubber coming out the front, and so those will slide over the arm. And as is the case with these things, when you slide them over, as you pull, it tends to tighten onto the arm, and then you can remove like so. So this, I assume, will just be a latex tube, and sort of typical slingshot rubber. So, and that's our kit inside the sheath, but there is more to come. So what we're really doing is following on from the extra equipment and survival kits that are in the Jungle King. So in fact, before we even go over the knife, just going to move to the very next thing, which is inside its hollow handle. So very nicely, to assist with the capsule coming out, there's a spring which also prevents that from rattling in use. And as might be typical, inside the tail cap we have a button compass, and here is the survival capsule. So let's see what we've got in there. So the Jungle King survival capsule, the cap of the handle with its compass in, and then the little capsule here has got two sections in it, and a bit like within the sheath where there's a little bottle you can put something, a fluid, oil perhaps, that you want to use. We also have an empty section at one end of the capsule for you to choose what you might want to put in there. And then the other side has been provided for you by Aitor. So these are notoriously tight and well packed. There we go. So wrapped up here, as is quite typical. We have a couple of first aid plasters. Also have a sterile, I'm sure it's a sterile scalpel blade, been folded neatly to keep the excess to a minimum. So plasters and scalpel blade, and then this will be we have a bit of cord, mid-sized cord, some sewing thread, tweezers, a couple of sewing needles, a couple of small safety pins, and then a fishing kit. So I'm actually going to use the tweezers to open up these staples. Actually, in a way, you know, I suppose if you don't want to rip the plastic, I'd rather be able to keep the contents neat. So if you had to, you could rip that plastic to pieces, but otherwise keep it intact. And strangely, you know, these little pieces of metal can be quite useful. Anyway, so within the sewing kit bag, try not to get myself stuck with the hooks in here. So we've got 3 split shot, lead or otherwise, don't know. Then in here, I think this is a length of line, and we've got 3 sizes of hook that are pre-tied. So you just want to tug on that one a little bit. Just setting the knot, it looked like it was a little loose. So we've got 3 pre-tied hooks, save you having to try and tie a knot like that, and you can just join those onto the extra length of line. So that's a useful set of little bits and pieces to help you in the hollow handle kit. So now that we've had a look at what's inside this hollow handle, so with the Aitors, the hollow handles are metal, so these are very strong, and we have a metal roll pin going into the tang of the blade. So overall, yeah, compared to a full tang knife, it's nowhere near as strong, but what we do have is a very strong construction for a hollow handle knife with an extended portion of support going forward to provide extra stability. And then onto the Jungle King blade. It's a large blade, large heavy blade, and you can see here as the light reflects off we have a hollow grind, and on the back we have a saw blade. Really, as we see using this type of sawback, it's more of a notching tool, but that's actually quite useful for making traps and shelters and cooking equipment. So although it's not as good as a straight saw, the sawback is useful for wood shaping, doing things that are not easy to do with the cutting edge. So we'll just come back out for overall ergonomics of this large knife. So we're just taking an overall look at this and see how large the Jungle King one is. You can see, so I take an XL size glove, and we've got plenty of extra space on the handle, giving me the ability to change my grip around for various cutting and chopping tasks. overall it's a good weight. We'll see when we do the technical measurements just how heavy this is. So there we have a classic, stood the test of time and inspired many others. Let's take a look at the next one. So as we move on to the Jungle King 2, we have to just look at the sheer scale of the Jungle King 1, and moving on to the Jungle King 2, which I'd say is probably more of a reasonable size, and in fact I would also consider this to be probably the most copied knife, or certainly in the hollow handle category, producing an awful lot of very poor quality knives that are really responsible for the bad reputation this type of knife has, whereas the Aitor version is a metal handle, and you'll see as we go over it the construction is quite different to all those very cheap copies. So let's move on to that. So the Jungle King 2, and it has exactly the same little leg strap that the Jungle King 1 has, possibly less important on a knife of this size. But what we also have is again feature packed package, loads of extra useful survival equipment built in to the Jungle King 2. So we'll set the knife aside and go over the details of the sheath and what that's got. So I'm going to zoom in again like we did with the Jungle King 1. So we've already covered that leg strap. So again, that very characteristic slingshot arm that is fitted into the base of the sheath, so that swings out, clips into place, and gives you the attachment points for the slingshot rubber. And it's a pinch to release and rotate it back into place. Again, we have a cord wrap across the body of the sheath, and so giving you useful cord, and also generally when you don't need it, covering the emergency sharpening stone on the back here. Wouldn't use that for daily use, you know, while you're actually just using the knife in a comfortable situation, but if you really had to and you needed a sharpening stone, you've got one built in. Again, we have the quick release tab retention strap, and again we have that on the belt loop, so you can fit this to your belt without undoing your belt. Once this is in place, and if the knife is in the sheath, then that tab can't release, so it won't come off. And then similarly, I've used the strap to keep that little cord in place. We have even more inside the sheath. We have another backup blade, and the insert tray. Let's now just run over these. So this is another little Skinner blade, in this case JKB, I believe that is. So we have a skinning hook, small straight edge, And much like the one in the Jungle King 1, we have a spanner within the handle, finger grip, jimping, and a combined tin opener, bottle opener, pry tool. And again, like on the Jungle King 1, there's a section in the back of the insert that is sort of like a half sheath that the small blade fits inside, a small signalling mirror, various useful signalling information. In this case, the tray's primarily there to hold the slingshot rubber. And there we have the slingshot rubber ready to fit onto the arms on the sheath. But there's even more. And the even more is in the hollow handle. So again, as we might typically expect on a hollow handle cap, we have a little button compass inside. Then we have the capsule, which within the handle there's a spring, and it prevents it from rattling and makes it easy to take out. And this is the more typical common capsule that we've also seen on the Aitor Commando. But we can have a quick recap and have a look at what's inside here. For the absolute, I'm probably not going to take the fishing kit out. Let's just go straight into that. On the Aitor Commando video that I've published, there's also a more detailed disassembly of this size capsule. And this one's not being as cooperative. Okay, there we go. So again, as we expect, a couple of plasters for small cuts, one of the sewing needles, so a scalpel blade, folded in differently. So here we have tweezers, little fire steel, a sewing thread, and another needle. There's a couple of safety pins, and that fishing kit that is the same. It's got 3-shot, 3 pre-tied hooks and a length of line. Then that rounds up everything that you also get with the Jungle King 2. So popping all of that back inside the handle again, minus all my fiddling around to get it back in the capsule. And here we have the Jungle King 2. So you can see here, this is a more typical utility size survival knife. So the handle just about there, filling my hand. And again, we have a full metal construction for the handle, an extended tang support coming forward from the guard with the roll pin holding the blade within the metal handle, and we have that slight sort of recurved blade with a hollow grind, the Aitor sawback or notching tool, and there we have the Jungle King 2. So just as we did when we stepped from the Jungle King 1 to the Jungle King 2, here now we have the Jungle King 2 and the Jungle King 3. So the Jungle King 3 is the latest addition to the Jungle King series, well, taking it from 1 and 2 to a series of 3. And for this one, my feeling of the Jungle King 3 is this is more of Dad has got Jungle King 2 or Jungle King 1, and son or daughter wants to follow in father's footsteps and have something very similar, but a little bit more appropriately sized, and it's built slightly differently. We have a plastic handle now for the Jungle King 3, so construction is all a little bit lighter, but it's still as per the Aitor quality, so not like those terrible cheap copies of the Jungle King 2 that flooded the market. Instead, we have a well-made but reduced Jungle King for someone that wants that slightly lighter and simpler version. So Jungle King 3, here the leg tie is a lace, there isn't a little clip or anything, so just have a small tie on leg tie. We do have that classic slingshot folding arms. So again there, fit the slingshot rubbers on, and also things are a little bit different, so I'm just going to pop those arms out of the way, come in just a little bit closer so you can see what's going on. So now with the Jungle King 3 we don't have that cord wrap, and when we turn over the sheath we don't have, well, we've got a cover but we don't seem to have that sharpening stone, and here we have a difference in that the storage compartment on the Jungle King 3 is behind this webbing flap, and under there are the slingshot rubbers. So very much like the insert tray on the Jungle King 2, but here we have the slingshot rubbers tucked inside. So you're going to have to bear with me now because I'm going to get these out. So take the rubbers out, and there, I think these are the same across all of them, but we have the slingshot rubber in there. So I'm going to put that back. So you can actually see how with the little slots for the rubber, you push it back and forward and it works its way down into place. Don't think you'd be doing this too many times. I think once you start deploying these rubbers you're going to use them till they break probably. Just to get ends of the tube tucked in there, and that's those rubbers back inside, and put the cover strip, the webbing cover, back in place, and there we have it all back together. So now with the Jungle King 3, I think because of overall scale, in this case we have got a press stud. It's also easier if perhaps this is aimed at a younger user for retention of the knife. I'll pop that aside quickly. However, the belt loop is the same on the others with that quick release tab and the ability to put it on and off the belt without undoing your belt. And again, when the knife is in place, the handle prevents this tab from moving. And in this one, because we've got that storage compartment for the slingshot here, we don't have anything else within the sheath. We do, however, have additional storage in the handle. So here is the Jungle King 3, and now we have that little compass accessible all the time, so it's visible through the end of the handle. What I would say though, generally compasses used anywhere near the knife aren't going to be really worth much of anything, so take that off and use the compass away from the knife. So having opened the knife up, now here we see some metal threads. This is what I'm saying, where Aitor, they may have used a plastic handle, but there are elements of quality you have with this lighter build version of the Jungle King, but still attention to detail, wanting this to actually be a useful tool. So inside, a different set of survival equipment. While we're looking in the knife, I'm not sure if I'll be able to show here. This brass insert with the threads, it actually extends down to about here. I can't quite show that. And beyond that then the handle is completely plastic. There's a roll pin holding the end of the blade tang in place. One thing I would say with this type of construction is use it appropriately. I think we all need to be a bit more aware of appropriate tool use. You can, for example, batten with a folder if you do it carefully and appropriately. So it's not as strong as those with the metal handle, but I think it's perfectly usable. So let's now zoom in a bit closer on this survival equipment. Okay, so we'll keep the little compass in sight as well. So here, that's in the way, okay, so we have a nice little tool, so steel I would think, and got a screwdriver, pry tool, bottle opener, can opener, all neat little tool there. That zips around the little mini capsule. So this capsule then is smaller still, so this is the Jungle King 1 capsule. Jungle King 2 I haven't got to hand, I'll just put that aside. So it is in proportion with the knife, and it's going to be even more difficult to get anything out without, I'm going to use the little tool to try and pull it out. Yeah, that's doesn't really want to move. I don't really want to puncture the sterile scalpel blade, so I'll have a little fiddle with this and get it out, and let's see what's inside. Okay, so that needed a bit of banging, but there we go. It does come out, but yeah, a little bit of noise required to get there. So here we're going to have we've got a smaller kit, so no plasters. We have all quite tightly wrapped. So the fishing kit here, I would suspect it's the same. I'm not going to unwrap that because I do want to try and put this back together. Again, tweezers, and we have one thread, one needle, and one safety pin. So slightly cut down for the smaller handle, but with an extra tool, making this very useful set of additions. So a little bit of persuasion, that's back inside. That is pretty tight. I wouldn't think, once you've got that opened, consider it kind of single use. And back into the smaller compartment in the Jungle King 3. So while we're in at this level, let's look over that handle. And the Jungle King 3 blade. So here, instead of a saw back, we have a serrated edge, quite a wide angle. You're just going to be sawing at gristle or something like that with that type of edge. It's not a saw, but a serrated. It's not chisel grind, it's double-sided serration. Hollow ground. And that's the blade on the Jungle King 3. So we're taking a look at the handling of this. So as you can see, definitely a much smaller knife. My hand coming off the edge of the handle. But let's say this isn't designed for me. It's designed for somebody smaller with smaller hands, younger, and really getting to learn the skills of survival and knife use. And there's the fit into the sheath and the press stud closure. So now we have the Jungle King 3. So now we're moving on to the detailed technical measurements for the Jungle King 1, 2 and 3. We're going to do these all together so you can see all the direct comparisons between these quite significantly different versions, although all in the same theme for Jungle King. So it's a little bit of juggling around. So first of all, the Jungle King total weight is 1013 grams. Jungle King 2 467 grams. Jungle King 3 255 grams. So we've got the knives sheathed. So the length of the sheath does actually extend slightly beyond, so I'm going to measure that entire length. So the Jungle King 1 is 40 centimeters in the sheath. Jungle King 2 similarly measured across the back, and we have 32.5 centimeters length. Jungle King 3, and that's 27 centimeters long. Right, now, actually the guard on the Jungle King sticks out quite a bit beyond the sheath, but so that effectively means that when I measure sheathed width, it includes the guard. So the sheathed width of the Jungle King, 79.6 millimeters, 59.5 millimeters. Width of the Jungle King 3 sheath is 52.1 millimeters. Sheath thickness with there's a slight step here, but I'm just going to find which is the thickest part. Actually, that includes across the strap. So we've got 51.8 millimeters for the Jungle King 1. Same again for the Jungle King 2. The widest part is where the retention strap is, which is 44.3. And the Jungle King 3, 38.3. So back to the weights, and this time of just the knife. A little bit disorderly doing all of these, but please bear with me. So, Jungle King 1. And the knife is 603 grams. Jungle King 2. $238 grams. Jungle King 3, 130 grams. Oh, just pausing to get a few things out of the way. So now on to overall length of the Jungle King 1. And that is 36 centimeters. Jungle King 2, 27.5 centimeters. And the Jungle King 3, 22 centimeters. Blade length of the Jungle King 1, and that is 20.6 centimeters. Jungle King 2, and that is 13.9 centimeters. And the Jungle King 3 is 10.7 centimeters blade length. Handle thickness, nicely with a round tube. There's only one measurement required. So this will be, so it's 29.8 millimeters. That's handle thickness and depth. For the Jungle King 2, we have 27.7 millimeters. Jungle King 3 actually tapers all the way down, so I'm going to take it at this end here, but again it's round, so it's one measurement, and that is 28.1 millimeters handle thickness and depth. So the balance point now. So we have the Jungle King 1 is balancing on the extra support from the handle. So the balance point is 21.5 centimeters from the tip. So Jungle King 2 is just behind the guard. Which gives us 15.8 centimeters from the tip. And Jungle King 3. Obviously this is all with the included kits, which would change the balance slightly if they were removed. And for the 3, this is more difficult to get. So it wants to rotate itself. So we have 14.6 centimeters from the tip. So you can see that's quite within the handle. So we'll have a look at the blade thickness now. So for the Jungle King 1, .9 Jungle King 2, 3.9 Jungle King 3, 2.3 So we've seen before, don't need to prove it. You can see as I turn the knife here, the reflections are a hollow grind. So all 3 use a hollow grind. With the Jungle King 1, we have a parallel blade, so grind thickness and blade depth. Let's go with grind length is 13.8 and at the same position blade depth is 37.9 For the Jungle King 2 and 3, I'm going to use the widest point here. So grind length 10.4 and the blade depth 29.2 Jungle King 3, so we have 12.8 and 23.4 Little switch around, so we're getting on to angle measurements now. So for the primary bevel angle, we're looking at geometry here. So although it's a hollow grind, I'm still going to take an angle across the actual shoulder of the top of the hollow grind and consider that the sort of wedge the knife is cutting with. So for the Jungle King 1, so we have, and it's 19 degrees and 10 minutes. 19 degrees 10 minutes for the Jungle King 1. Onto the Jungle King 2. It's actually slightly wider. So the Jungle King 2 is 19 degrees and 50 minutes. So 19 degrees 50 minutes for the Jungle King 2. Jungle King 3 looks a lot finer, but let's see. Thinner blade, higher grind on the hollow. Okay, so for the Jungle King 3, we have 9 degrees I'd say 9 degrees and 2 minutes. So it's quite a bit finer for the Jungle King 3. We use the laser edge bevel protractor to look at the factory edge angles. So for the Jungle King 1, so the right hand factory edge is at 26 degrees and the left bevel is at 28 degrees. Jungle King 2, so the right hand bevel is 16 degrees and the left hand factory bevel is 26 degrees. These of course are the factory edges. And finally for the Jungle King 3, so we actually have possibly a not very clean edge, because I'm looking at, for the the right hand edge actually come round at about 40 degrees and the left hand edge at 24 degrees. So there might be a burr on there. Anyway, we'll see what the sharpness is shortly. Point angles. Jungle King 1. So Jungle King 1 point angle is 60 degrees. Jungle King 2. Jungle King 2 is 64 degrees point angle. Jungle King 3 is 66 degrees point angle. So now we'll have a look at the thickness behind the edge. So for the Jungle King 1, .86 millimeters. Jungle King 2. Is 1.23 millimeters thickness behind the edge. Jungle King 3. Is 0.66 millimeters thickness behind the edge. And all of these knives are straight, so the rake, there is no rake, 0 degrees for all three. And again, another little swap around to give me room to do all of the factory edge sharpness measurements. So Jungle King 1, center sharpness, $525 grams. Sharpness at the heel, $412 grams. Running out of space for this one. So sharpness at the tip, $561 grams. Over to the Jungle King 2. Center sharpness for the Jungle King 2. 415 grams. Sharpness at the heel, 379 grams. And sharpness at the tip, 356 grams. And finally the Jungle King 3, center sharpness, 415 grams. Sharpness at the heel. £446 grams. Sharpness at the tip. 645 grams. Thank you for joining me at this look at the Aitor Jungle King series, and remember, get informed, be prepared, stay sharp.